According to a recent survey, nearly 2/3 of Americans say they don't believe they'll ever be able to retire. 2/3. If you're in that group, I want you to stay right here because today we're going to talk about some people that we've worked with over the years that felt exactly like that. And the good news is they're all retired, right? So let's talk through this today, Mitch. I feel like this has become a real issue for folks. We never used to hear, 25 years ago when I started this business, I never used to hear it the way that I do today. And I think that has a lot to do with the pandemic, and that kind of took a lot of people out of their momentum when it comes to this and made them feel like a lot of people I feel like needed to kind of dip into their savings and needed to kind of hit the reset button and had a lot of momentum going into like 2019, 2020, and then felt like they lost a lot of their momentum. And because of that, I think that created some real feelings of falling behind, not being able to save like they used to. A lot of people, it feels like, just kind of gave up.
That's right, Stewart. It's been a tough few years for a lot, and there's a lot of different reasons. I think the pandemic has a lot to do with it, and people came out of that sort of time into a very different job market. And we've seen a lot of things change over the last few years. There's something interesting I was reading about the other day. We've seen this is the highest rate of pre-59.5 401k withdrawals we've had in a long time. So that shows that people are having to dip into those retirement savings early. We've seen the housing market struggle right now. We've seen inflation, highest it's been in a while. There's a lot of factors that I think are causing this, and that's why I think it's so important to talk today, because 2/3 of people is a lot, man.
Yeah, I personally kind of take offense to that, being a retirement planner myself. And so that feels very personal for me when someone comes and sits and tells me, hey, and not by choice, but I'm just going to work forever.
Yep.
The truth of the matter is you can retire. Yeah. There's ways to hit the reset button, reapproach this thing from a little different angle. And the biggest thing that I've learned is that in retirement, it's not necessarily about assets and investments. It's more about income.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to income, it's not what you make, it's what you get to keep.
Right.
And what I would say to folks is there are some real strategies and real things that you can really stay focused on that are going to make the difference between that reality of actually being able to retire and not being able to retire. And we're going to talk about it. What these examples that we're going to walk through show you is that in retirement, your overhead is huge. What does it cost you to maintain your lifestyle on a monthly basis all in? And we have this conversation so much with folks because really that's what it comes down to, Mitch. We have folks that come in that literally could live off of $2,000 a month.
Yep.
And we have folks that come in and could not survive off of less than $15,000 a month.
Absolutely.
And I think it comes down to small things that you can do as you get closer to that, the magic time of having the option. And we don't even really talk about retirement in the same way we used to, but having the option to not have to work anymore. And a lot of people, that's easier for them to kind of grasp and put their arms around is, when would you like to have the option to not have to work anymore? We've had a lot of folks say to me, and I've had a gentleman say it not too long ago, like, I'm going to work till I die by choice.
Right.
I'm going to work because, and his reasoning was because my father retired and reluctantly retired and was passed away within like 6 months. And so he had firmly planted this seed in his head that once you retire, that's a fast track to passing away. And we see that a lot too. And I think the key to that is like, how you go about your retirement.
Yeah.
You can't just sit around and watch reruns of Matlock, and you have to really have a real life built for yourself that is meaningful outside of work. And we've talked about that so many times. But let's walk through some of these examples, and let's try to give people a good idea of some different real life examples of what retirement looked like for other folks. So years back, we worked with Maria, and Maria spent 35 years in food service as waitress, hostessing. She eventually worked her way up to being a shift supervisor at a diner. She loved work and she loved her regulars, but she never had access to a 401k or some workplace savings plan where she could save. She basically existed off of tips, and her employer never offered her any benefits. So she figured retirement was just something that happened to other people, right? She literally felt like that just was out of her reach and not something that she would ever be able to do herself. But it just by chance at age 48, she came across a customer who was a financial planner, and he left his business card for her. Wasn't us, but we came into contact with her later. And just kind of on a whim, she made an appointment. And, this is a great story because that appointment changed the trajectory of her life. And we say all the time that we've seen that happen, and that's happened with our firm more times than I can count over the last 25 years. I have tons of clients who've worked with me for 20 plus years who would tell you flat out, if they weren't working with me, they'd be living a different life now. I'm proud to say that. Like, we have changed lives for the better. But, the planner showed her two things that changed everything. The first thing was she taught her what a Roth IRA is. And because Maria's income was low, she paid very little in taxes. That made a Roth IRA, where contributions go in after tax but grow and come out completely tax-free, almost perfectly suited for her and her situation. And at $32,000 a year, she was in a 12% tax bracket and never had to pay taxes on that money again, right? We see this all the time is people don't, for whatever reason, they don't really understand Social Security.
Yeah.
A lot of people are really surprised to find out that they are going to get a pretty substantial income. As long as you've worked enough in this country and paid into the system, you're going to get a pretty substantial income for the rest of your life that is adjusted for inflation over time. And we hear people all the time when they'll blow that off.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to get much.
I can't count on that. The government's underfunded. There's all these issues. And what if the country just falls apart tomorrow? All of that is a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, look, this grand experiment that we've been doing for 250 years now is just that.
It is.
And it's the first country that, we've ever had just pure democracy for this amount of time. And
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Going back in history, every, country, every region, every whatever you want to call it, has been ruled by either, some sort of king, some sort of oligarch, some kind of, absolute ruler,
some
so to
royal
speak.
family.
And so, this was a huge departure from all of that, where, different, branches of government were put into place to keep checks and balances on each other. And, for the most part, it's worked pretty well for the last 250 years. But again, we could wake up tomorrow and that could change.
There's
And
problems. There's certainly, everyone will point to the debt and all these different things. But the truth is, guys, every country's in debt. We have the most, but we also produce the most. We have the highest GDP. China's second, but we produce the most for the world. We produce the most, production. We have the highest GDP. We have all of this. So it's an experiment and it's different, but it's working, right? You could just have this idea that everything's going to fall apart, but we can't plan like that, right? We have to plan for different outcomes, but we can't plan for just everything to break, right? So the country's working, and these, Social Security is underfunded. These things are problems that we're going to have to address for sure, but every country has problems, right? There's always something to address. So we got to focus on the information that we have, the outcomes that are within a reasonable range, and focus on how we can optimize for, this retirement that we're looking at. Yeah.
Getting back to Maria here.
Yeah.
So Maria was able to start at this advisor's recommendation, start to put some money away into a Roth IRA. She was able to really kind of optimize her Social Security and really get her arms around what kind of income that was going to provide for her. And even starting at 48, Maria contributed about $350 a month or $4,200 a year for 15 years until she reached age 63. And averaging about 6% annual growth, her account grew to about $103,000. And then Social Security, which at her full retirement age of waiting till age 67, she received the full projected benefit. So the other thing that Maria did, which was very smart, she decided that it made more sense for her to leave a more high tax, expensive cost of living area once she retired and move to a lower cost area where things were a little more affordable and the cost of living was easier to handle. So at retirement, she moved about 90 miles away. Her rent dropped from $1,250 to $825, about saving her about $5,100 a year. Her Social Security was $1,847 a month. With all of those things in place, with $103,000 in the Roth, the $1,847 in Social Security, really what that worked out was that Roth produced about $430 a month, sustainable, only a 5% withdrawal on that Roth, which is something that she should be able to continue for the rest of her life and not erode her principal. Her total monthly income came in at about $2,277 a month. And when she looked at her expenses and she really kept it very reasonable as far as and didn't spend more than she should, she got her expenses down to just over $2,000 a month, which left her a comfortable, couple $100 a month surplus.
Yeah. And
she was able to retire comfortably off of that. And again, what this story illustrates is it's not necessarily how much you have, it's what you need.
Yeah.
And that is so critical for people to understand. Now, all of these people who are feeling, really depressed when they start thinking about retirement and really feeling like there's just no way it's going to happen. I'm going to have to work till I'm in my 70s. A lot of times that's just not reality. And, a lot of times when these people dig in and start looking at what they're spending money on, what they find is that they can easily create a monthly surplus and not spend everything that's coming in every month if they were just to buckle down and get realistic about what's going on. And, if you're able to do that, then what happens is that money can be diverted and put to work and go to places that make more sense. And, the first thing I would say is if you're still relatively young, and I would say, in your 40s, 40 to 55 or 40 to 60, the first thing you should do is do a Roth.
Yeah.
Like the Roth is just going to make the most sense for you because, again, if you can create a $300 surplus every month and you start just automatically investing that every month, have it just come directly out of your checking account or your savings account to go into a Roth, and you can do that. And that money starts to accumulate, and then you set it up to where it gets automatically invested into, a pretty smart little portfolio of some index funds or something that's doesn't have to be too complicated at all. You'd be shocked at how much you're able to grow, and before you know it, you'll have 100, 150, 200,000. And what you have to understand is when you do get to retirement with that money at 62, 65, whatever that is, and you have 200,000 of tax-free money to supplement your monthly income on top of Social Security, that can really go a long way, right? I mean, $200,000 is going to spin off, at least $10,000-$15,000 a year of good, solid, tax-free income. And let's just say it's $1,000 a month, right? I think that's pretty reasonable to think. That's what, about 6%.
Yeah.
So let's say it's $1,000 a month, and you're getting $1,800 a month from Social Security. I mean, that if you have $2,800 a month coming in, and you're basically don't pay taxes at that point because your Social Security is not taxable at that level. I mean, $2,800 a month is, if you don't, I think one of the magic things is getting your home paid.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
That's one of the secrets. If you can get your home paid off and don't have a mortgage going into retirement, it makes retirement much, much more feasible. I mean, if you can save, $1,200 to $2,000 a month, which is pretty common on a mortgage, if you can save that and that you don't have to pay that. Of course, you still have to pay taxes, but house taxes. But how much more feasible is it that you get to retire at a reasonable age if you can somehow manage to do that? So, for you guys out there that bought your house at your first house at 30 and you still live there and you're, 45, if you can stick it in and finish out that 30-year mortgage, at 60, then you're going to be in really good shape to go ahead and retire at a decent age once that mortgage is off the table. And it just opens up all kinds of other doors for you to be able to leverage the equity and the value in that home if you needed to in some sort of emergency type situation. But again, real small, modest changes to habits can create situations where, retirement becomes a lot more feasible and a lot more attractive. And, listen, everybody needs to enjoy a few years at least before you leave us of not having to get up and go to work every day.
You got to, and you're absolutely right, Stewart. I mean, what we see so often with the power of compounding is it's the small changes that really make a difference. I was sitting with a couple literally yesterday, and we went through the expenses, and they found that they reasonably had $1,000 a month surplus. Right? They're like, all right, like we could make this work. So we ran some projections. We said, all right, if we put $1,000 a month in a Roth, $500 each, and we did that for 11 years, they're going to retire in 11 years. At 7%, compounding monthly, that would turn into $180,000. They were blown away. They were like, if we can just stick this out with $1,000 a month. And then I said, all right, what if we added 500? What if we turned 1,000 to 1,500? That 180 turned in almost $300,000 in 11 years. So just adding $500 a month, we looked at all their expenses plus a little bit of discretionary money, but everything all in. And they were like, we can find another $500. You know what I mean? Because that could change. I mean, the difference between 180 and 300,000 in retirement is huge, right? So that's the magic of compounding, is it's usually small things that can build it up. So if, like Stewart said, if you're able to be in a position where you have a house paid off, especially, in your 50s or something like that, like that really opens up a surplus. And if you can see the power of compounding and you can see how impactful it can be to add a few $100s extra a month to any kind of retirement savings, it can change the entire retirement picture. And that's what working with a financial planner office will do. They had never even A, been taught that, or B, understood that concept. And if you don't have to worry about stuff like that, you can start worrying about, all right, what does retirement look like? Because we talked about at the beginning, the ability to not have to work is the key. Some people just love what they do. We love what we do. A lot of people just love to go to work, and they love the community. They love being involved. They love it. But the stress of not having to do that is the key. And if you work with a firm, whether it's us or whoever, and they can teach and educate you and show you what that looks like, you can relax and not have to stress about how to get to retirement and focus on, all right, what do I want to do? What do I enjoy doing, right? And that's what, we help plan for, is to show you what lets you think more about what does that look like? What do you want to be doing? And help you step into retirement knowing that you can do the things you want to do and you don't have to work, because we built out a solid income plan for you.
Yeah. And what that may come down to is, things like, I know a lot of people dream of traveling, and they dream of being in a position to help their grandkids and doing a lot of things in retirement. And some of that just may not be possible, but that doesn't mean retirement's not possible.
Right.
And I think that, faced with, the option of, grandma and grandpa working until they're in their 70s, or, maybe them not having quite as much spendable cash, but being available and more, being able to spend more quality time with them. I think all those grandchildren would tell you what that choice would be.
Yeah.
And, it may not be taking trips to Hawaii every year, right? It just may not be. And I think, tempering some of that expectation is warranted in some of these situations. But, again, it just depends on how bad you want it.
Right.
And, it's like, if that's really important to you, then, that might mean delaying that new car that you get every 4 years for an extra couple of years, and taking that car payment that you would be making and putting it into an IRA or something, or Roth or brokerage account or anything really, and just getting a little ahead here and a little ahead there. And we see it all the time. We see people who just have unrealistic expectations of what their retirement should look like. And a lot of times, it's just not realistic. And, again, I think once people settle into that and they get used to being retired, in that, living in the very modestly and that sort, I think they're fine. It's fine. It's not. But a lot of times we have to talk to clients about, hey, do we really need to spend this money now? Do we really need to take this trip, or do we really need to? And a lot of times, in all honesty, where a real problem occurs in people's retirement is this real need that people feel to help their adult children.
Yeah.
I can't believe how often this occurs and becomes an issue for people who are living fairly modest retirements, where they have an adult child that gets into some sort of financial situation, and they feel the need, almost feel obligated to bail that person out financially, when they really don't have the assets and to do it. And that's that's a real issue that people need to understand is like, look, that wasn't part of our plan.
Right.
I've seen this happen time and time again. And this is more of a psychological issue that goes on within these families of this need to fulfill to help these adult children who, in all honesty, guys, I think one of the reasons that I've been so successful financially is because I knew I didn't have that safety net. I didn't have anybody to go to. My parents weren't in a position to help me financially. And because they weren't, and because I knew that, I worked harder. I was more driven. I was always making sure that I would never put myself in a situation to have to hold my hand out and ask for help because I knew there was no help there. And, these adult children, just are, that generation is just a different generation, and they don't mind at all. And they feel this entitlement for whatever reason to, even though they're 37 and mom and dad pay for college, they put food on the table and kept them clothed and safe for 18 years and did all the things right, that at 37 they can come to them and say, hey, I'm going through a really nasty divorce and I'm out of money and I need $10,000 from you to help me get through this divorce or whatever. And it's like, hey, you need to be able to say no. That is not your issue. That is, you have a very finite amount of assets that are allocated to creating your income in retirement. And you need to be able to look that adult child in the eye and say, you got yourself into this and you're going to have to find your own way out of it. And that is something that I see that is just a lot of parents nowadays of adult children just don't have they just can't do it.
They can't. And we've even seen, in that example, that's, hey, I need this one-time help. We've seen situations where the parents who are retired and again on a fixed budget feel the need to enhance the adult child's lifestyle. It's like, hey, so-and-so, my child's been through a tough time emotionally. They need to be on this trip to, it's like some discretionary thing. And that one's even more frustrating. It's like, it's so good to be able to help. And a lot of our planning is to, give people in retirement the ability to help, whether there's kids or grandkids, whatever it is, people really want to do that. But if you're on a finite budget, we don't have the money to send the kid on a 3-week trip to Italy because they've had a tough emotional year. You know what I mean? We've literally had these combos. So, make sure that it fits in. Stewart, you had a really good quote when we were talking about college and these kind of things. It's great to be able to help kids through college and all that stuff, but there's no loans for retirement. And that one really hit me. You told me that when I first started in the business. And it's true. There's no loans for retirement. Student loans it's nice to not be able to have them, but they're very low interest. They're super reasonable. They're often in forbearance, and there's a lot of different plans, and there's low income plans. There's so many. Student loans are not unaffordable. They're very, very reasonable, but there's no loan for retirement. You can't take out anything to do that. And that quote really stuck with me.
There's no loans, there's no grants, there's no scholarships,
Yeah.
There's none of that for retirement. And a lot of times when adults are trying to decide, do I, up the percentage contribution to my 401k, or do I take that money and save it in a college 529 plan or something, that your priority should always be retirement.
100%.
Always. If you're making that decision and you're struggling with that, just let me help you.
Yeah.
Like that is not, there's no decision to make. Again, they can get loans for college, they can get grants, they can get scholarships, there's all kinds of resources available to get them through school. They can join the military like I did and have the military cover that bill. Right. They can do a lot of things. You can't do any of that when it comes time for retirement. You are stuck with what you've done and how much money you've saved and where you've saved it and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's a great point, Mitch. We see that a lot.
Yeah.
but you know, it's really these are things that just having a good advisor, having someone who can talk you through the logic of behind these decisions and why you would make these decisions. You know, I think it's so incredibly valuable. I mean, I can't tell you the number of folks that have come in to see us with this feeling like we're talking about of just like, we're never going to be able to do this. I don't see it. I don't see the path. Everything it just seems impossible and we're never going to get there. And it's one reason why we named it Clear Path, right? Is like,
Yeah.
we show you the path. We show you, we find a way to help you get to the place where you can confidently hang things up and walk away knowing that you're going to be okay. Like, listen, that might be a situation where you've got a couple who's in their 60s who are both eligible for a decent Social Security. Between the two of them, they're $4,000 a month in Social Security.
Yeah.
And they have very modest savings and a couple $100,000 in IRAs or Roths or 401ks or wherever. And if your income needs are not dramatic, if you let's say your income needs are 32 to 3,500 a month, you've got a little surplus there, and then we're able to take the money that you've saved and invest that in a manner where if you want to take a trip, or the house needs a new roof, or the car breaks down, and those things happen where you have a go-to kind of place to go get that money and make sure that you can keep things going, then that's, you know, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it with that. It is not impossible. And you just have to really, the best thing you can do is to know where you're at today. And if you're in your 50s, mid 50s to early 60s, and you feel this way, you feel like kind of lost and I just don't know how I'm going to do this, and I just feel like I'm going to work forever, come to clearpathretirement.com. Let us know how you're feeling. Let us know what's going on with you. And the best thing that we can do today is to sit down and let's figure out, first of all, where you're at.
Yeah.
Let's get our arms around exactly where you're at. And then what we can do is we can show you a very systematic way, a very strategic way to get to just enough to make sure that you don't have to work forever. And, you know, listen, if you want to work past that out of choice, that's fine.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that you have the option of not working anymore at a reasonable age. And that if, you know, if you want to walk away and go enjoy life and have the freedom of not having to get up and go to work and all of that every day, then every American should enjoy that. Every American should have that choice. And we just want to help you get there, right? Like,
Right.
And nothing, I tell you, nothing is more, you know, rewarding for us than to help people out of that situation.
Agreed.
Where they're just feeling helpless, where they're just feeling like they're never going to have enough, where they're just, you know, and I can tell you that we've done it so many times now. In 25 years, I have helped thousands of people in that situation, and we know what we're doing, right? Like, we have the answers, and we didn't get there easily. You know, we've gotten a lot of bumps and bruises and cuts along the way, but we have learned and we have gotten better and better and better at what we do. And I can honestly tell you that today we bring some serious experience to the table when it comes to this, and we can help you. We can certainly help you. So if you're feeling this way, go to clearpathretirement.com. Let us know. Let's have a conversation. No pressure. Let's figure out where you're at and where you need to go from here. Okay. We mentioned getting the house paid off is key. Like a lot of people ask us, should I pay my house off or this, or should I pay? You should pay your house off.
Yeah.
Like if you can pay your house off, you should pay your house off. And I understand we get a lot of pushback on like, well, we get a tax deduction. Listen,
Right.
that it's not, especially once you get towards the end of that mortgage.
Yeah, you're not paying much interest.
It's not,
Yeah.
you're not paying much interest, and the
Yeah.
interest deduction is not significant.
No.
So I wouldn't let that stop me. But getting it psychologically going into retirement without a mortgage hanging over your head is huge. 2 Social Security checks is key. That can really help. Understand that 2 people going into retirement is easier than 1. And so, yeah, I don't know what that means to a lot of folks out there, but if you're leaning on possibly getting married, then maybe you should think about that.
Go for it.
And, of course, there's people who have small pension plans out there. Pension plans can be a beautiful thing. They can be really key. Don't forget about your pension.
No.
We have lots of people who come in and they say, oh, I think I got a little pension here. No, that's a big deal.
Yep.
I don't care if
$200.
it's $500 a month. That's a big deal because that's money you can count on for the rest of your life, every single month in and month out. And that's huge. Yeah. So do not forget about pensions. And while we're at it, another thing that we see constantly is people leave workplaces and move jobs and they forget about 401k that they had a little bit of money in, or maybe even more than that, in old jobs. Guys, this is critical.
Right.
You have to make sure that these things get handled correctly, that 401k, do not abandon an old 401k and expect it's probably going to be there when you remember it 10 years later, but you could have done so much better than to leave that thing behind where nobody's really managing that thing. You don't know what it's invested in anymore. You're not keeping up with it. Get that thing moved out to an IRA with an advisor that can help you to manage that and make sure you maximize that. I don't care if it's $2,000-$3,000. Doesn't matter.
No.
Do not leave those old 401k, old 403bs. Do not leave that stuff behind. I can't tell you how many people get to retirement in there. They're sitting with us and they go, oh, yeah, I totally forgot. I have this old 401k that from a company I worked at 20 years ago. And I was digging through some paperwork and found like an old statement or something. I wonder, it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
You could have really done something with that. So definitely do not leave those things behind. And then some other things that, I would think about is, again, as you get close to retirement, start really taking a deep dive on those expenses.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably the most important thing. Whatever age you are, whether you're 25 or 60, it's understand how much you need to spend, how much you want to spend, look at how much fund money you're spending and figure out what's a reasonable amount. The quicker you can understand that, the quicker you can start investing. You can start building a surplus or getting to the point where you have a surplus if you don't, and start, again, taking advantage of compounding. That's the most impactful thing you can do today, whatever age you are, is understand your expenses. And that's the thing we talk to every day. We have this conversation and everybody wants to talk about their 401k balances and their IRAs and their Roths and the growth. And we get to the expenses and they're like, I don't know, probably 8K, 5K. I have no clue. Nobody wants to talk about that. So the most meaningful 2 hours of your life you could spend is sitting down for a couple hours and figuring out exactly what you spend, exactly what you need to spend, and what you're spending for fun. And you need to spend some money for fun, but how much and what's really meaningful, what's wasted, and what can we invest?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you're having trouble with this and you're having trouble with getting your budget figured out, and a lot of people, we hear it all the time. It's like, okay, so I have bills that fluctuate. I
Yeah.
have bills I only pay every quarter. I have bills I pay annually. Let's be smart about
Yeah.
this. The annual bills, we take the annual payment, we break it down to 12 payments and we get everything down to a monthly
Yep.
budget. If
Start
you pay
there.
it quarterly, then you divide it by 3. If you pay, it's not difficult. And then we break everything down to what you spend on a monthly basis. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to have our wonderful marketing director, Kathy, put a really easy budget form on our website for you
Yeah.
at clearpathretirement.com. And that'll be there for you to download on our downloads page. And we'll throw that up for you guys. So it's really good because it can really help you get your head around, what your budget is. Nothing. Look, you spend 2 hours a year planning your family vacation. Why are you not spending at least 2 hours a year getting your budget figured out and figuring out how much it costs you to live on a monthly basis, to even understand, are we in a deficit situation? Are we in a surplus situation? If you're in a surplus situation, then where is that surplus going, and are we being as smart as we can about what we're doing with the extra money that we have every month? The worst people I see on this are people who are making more money than they're spending,
Yeah.
because they just have this feeling about it like, I, I don't, I don't, I don't need to look at price
Yeah. I'm fine.
tags.
I
I
mean,
don't need
yeah.
to, I don't look at the cost of stuff when I go to the grocery store. I don't, and look, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. But again, this is extremely important stuff, and you need to start getting realistic, because if you do it now and you start to really pay attention to, like, how much am I spending here and what are these things costing, there could be all kinds of money that's just getting kind of wasted in your poor, not paying attention to what you're doing type deal. And that money could be so much better put to use if you would just be more efficient and understand. It's like, I don't mind going into a deficit, but I want to know when I do,
Yeah. You have
right?
to.
Like, so yeah, so I hope all this is helpful to you guys. If you have questions, please come see us at clearpathretirement.com. If you need that budget form, we'll throw that up on our website for you, and you can come grab that and just spend some quality time with you and your spouse, or you on your own, and go through and really get real about those expenses. I think that'll be an exercise that will serve you so well as you go forward here. And if you got questions, let us know. We'll be happy to help. And thanks for tuning in today. And until next week, everybody, happy retirement. Hey, if you enjoyed what you heard today on our podcast, please tune in every week. And if you don't mind, drop us a like or subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us to get this great information out to more folks.